Hello, welcome to the sixth in this series on Mennonite history. It's called Revolution, Emigration, and Great Depression. It's a talk by me, Elma Schemenauer. I'm an author of a number of books. Elma Mary from the Prairie, I sometimes call myself. I was born Elma Mary Martins into a Mennonite family and Mennonite community on the Saskatchewan Prairie, and there's my website. In 1917, the Russian Revolution began while the First World War was still continuing, and it was followed by civil war in Russia. The Red Army supported the one-party Marxist socialist government led by Vladimir Lenin. And the Marxists had certain principles. One was there to be no religion, because religion was the opiate of the people. It just kept people from working for their own benefit and betterment. And another was not owning private property. Everything was to be owned together and in effect owned by the government. The White Army fought against this. Mennonites suffered a lot. They suffered both from the Red Army and the White Army. There was a lot of resentment against them because they did own things, and they were doing quite well financially, economically, and there was resentment about that, the fact that they were German speaking, and the fact, very importantly, that they had religious faith. In fact, they were very strong on that, and so there was persecution, and all kinds of awful things were done. Crops were burned, homes were plundered, preachers and others were killed or put in prison. During the Civil War, a number of Russian Mennonites became homeless, and American Mennonites were concerned about their brethren in faith, or sisters in faith in Russia, and in 1920 they formed the Mennonite Central Committee, or MCC, to help these refugees. Canadian government had been closed to immigration of Mennonites for a while, but in 1923, they changed those strict immigration laws, and a number of Russian Mennonites began immigrating to Canada. I think this is an interesting picture. This is 25 cents issued by the Dominion of Canada in July 1923. Looks quite different from our quarters today. Here's the Red Gate. And on the Russian side, the Soviet Union side, it says, "Welcome to the workers' paradise." Unfortunately, a lot of Russian Mennonites didn't find it to be a workers' paradise or a paradise of any kind, and they were very anxious to get out. It wasn't that easy to get out. The Soviet Union didn't want to let them out, but there were various ways of doing it, and so a number of them managed to leave. They went by rail through this gate here, which was called the Red Gate. It led from the Soviet Union to Riga, Latvia, from where they could go on to other places. There was that period of emigration of Russian Mennonites to Canada from 1923 to 1929, when the doors were closed again. The doors to Canadian immigration were closed again for a while. Steamships during that time took thousands of Mennonites across the Atlantic to Canada. From eastern Canadian ports like Halifax and Montreal, many traveled by train to settle in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta. And many of them had been farmers in the Soviet Union, and so they wanted to settle there and to farm again, and also to be with other Mennonites, because there were already Mennonites in those places. Worshiping God and studying the Bible were important to the Mennonite newcomers in Canada. In some cases, they gathered in each other's homes until they could afford a simple church building. I know in the case of our family and our community that I was born into, they met in each other's homes, and then they bought a school. There were a lot of one-room schools around in those days, and they bought a school. This is not the one, but it's very similar to this, and they turned it into a church, and then worshiped in there. In 1928, Mennonites were making their way west. They started their first settlement in British Columbia. It was at Yarrow, which is near Abbotsford in the Fraser Valley. And the Mennonites' aim in going there was to grow fruit and serve God. Unfortunately, in 1929, the Great Depression began, on the prairies in the United States and in Canada. The economic depression was made much worse because of drought, very severe drought conditions, very hot temperatures, high temperatures, and the land dried out, and a lot of it just blew away in the wind. It was very hard on prairie farmers, including Mennonites. So what were the Mennonites to do? They were new in Canada. What were they to do? Things were so tough, but some of them, the young women, went to work as maids for wealthy families in the cities, like Saskatoon or Winnipeg or Vancouver. They would work there, and then they would be able to send money home, and or if not, they could at least support themselves, and so that relieved the financial burden on their families at home. The young men did whatever they could. It was a very, very difficult time because the farms were not producing much, or if anything. And my dad tells a lot of stories about those times. He ran a trap line. He was a young man at the time. He sold vegetables from his parents' garden. He would go to nearby Davidson, Saskatchewan, and go through the streets with a cart, I guess, or something, and sell vegetables. At one point, he rode the rails to an area where the drought wasn't so bad, less dry area, and worked for farmers there. Family ties continued to be important, and despite the tough times. Here is a family gathering of my father, who's marked with the blue rectangle, along with his mother here and his father here. These are would be my grandparents, one set of grandparents, and these are other relatives. And so family ties, they visited together. They didn't have much. If you had company, you were lucky if you had buns and coffee to serve them. They just didn't have very much at all, but they did what they could. And I think Mennonites who were on farms didn't suffer so much from the drought as those who were in the cities, because on the farms, at least they could raise something. My grandmother here was a wonderful gardener, and she managed to raise vegetables even during those tough times. And as I said, my father had a trap line, and they probably also brought home meat that they hunted. And so on the farms, it was a little easier, not in all cases, but it was a tough time. 1933, undeterred by the Depression, Chicago was holding a World's Fair. I suppose they were trying to lift the mood and indicate that the future would be brighter than the past. At the same time, the first Latin American Mennonite church was started. It was in Chicago's Lawndale area, and David Castillo was the first pastor. In 1936, still during the Great Depression, James and Rowena Lark started helping with Mennonite Summer Bible School in the state of Virginia. And they were to go on to become the first African-American pastor couple, the first African-American Mennonite pastor couple. And they worked with Mennonite congregations in many states over the years. Here they are shown in their later years. Back in Russia, meanwhile, in Russia, the Mennonites were being forced into collective farming, and this didn't work well, and it didn't suit their self-reliant temperament. If you look for pictures of collective farming in the Soviet Union, you find pictures of a lot of abandoned ones, because it didn't work too well, and it certainly didn't suit their self-reliant temperament. They were used to just working for themselves and being able to keep what they made. Where this was not possible, the government would just in some cases just come and take the last things they had. They come and take their last horse or whatever, just claiming that, oh, well, everything belongs to everyone. But it was a good excuse to take things away. Was not a good time. Many Russian Mennonite men were sent to forced labor camps in Siberia and elsewhere. Very sad. Women and children would be left behind. A number of stories of women and children eventually making their way to Canada or to other countries where they could have more freedom, and the men were left behind, and in some cases nobody even knew whether they were still alive or what had happened to them. And there was also a lot of restriction on whether you could write to people. I know that some of my relatives have collections of letters that were written during those times, but not all the letters got through. They knew that not all the letters that were sent out of the Soviet Union got through, and those that did were sometimes quite changed. The censors had taken parts of them out, blocked parts of them out, because they didn't want people to know how bad things were really going, how badly things were really going in the Soviet Union. All right, I'll see you in the next episode of this YouTube series. It's the last one, and it's called Mennonite History 7, Borders and Beyond. Here's my novel, Consider the Sunflowers. It's 299 pages, takes place in the 1940s. It's a Prairie Mennonite novel and includes a Mennonite timeline in the back. It's about a woman pursuing happiness with a man. She's a nice Mennonite woman, but he's kind of a rebel, and he is haunted by racism. It's not a traditional Mennonite, and also by mystery from his past. So if you're interested in that, it's available for $20 online from the publisher, which is Borealis Press of Ottawa, Canada, or Chapters Indigo or Amazon. Thank you for listening.